Hey, right now we've got Keith Morris on the line. We've got a little funky situation with our phone system. Imagine that, but we're going to go ahead and put Keith Morris on. We are all big fans and supporters of Keith, his entire career, and his new book is out too, which we're going to speak about right now, which is kind of one of the reasons we're on here. It's called My Damage, and let's get Keith on the phone right now. Keith, can you hear me, man?
Yes, I can.
Awesome. First of all, thanks.
Loud and clear.
Nice. All right. Yeah, thanks a million for being on the show tonight, man.
Well, you can send a check for $1 million to this address. Actually, you can send the check to my lawyer, and he'll take his cut and then cut it up and divide it amongst all the other people that are supposed to get part of the $1 million.
Will there be anything left for you?
I'm the low man on the totem pole, so I get scraps and the trickle down and whatever is left over. I get leftovers.
I feel like I'm interviewing Greg from Black Flag all of a sudden.
What, Greg Ginn?
I'm just making a joke.
Yeah, we don't need to talk about Greg Ginn.
It was a money kind of thing, joke, you know?
Oh, now I get it. Okay.
Okay.
Mr. Funny Guy.
If I was a mushroom, I'd be a fun guy.
What you should do is you should stop being a radio host and go directly to stand-up comedy. And then if you've got kids, if you've got a wife and kids or a girlfriend with kids, they rely upon you to put food in the refrigerator. And you come home at the end of the night, and they're all up waiting for you. Daddy, we're hungry. That would be a reflection on you and your comic skills.
Oh, man. I would be afraid to get up there because they'd all laugh at me. Duh.
They throw things, right? Well, maybe they'll throw money.
Maybe they'd throw a copy of your new book. It would really knock me out because that book is so thick, man.
Well, you would be looking, or you would be trained that you would be looking at somebody over on the left side, and you would get hit in the right side of the head.
Welcome, Keith.
Ever get hit by a half full bottle or a full can, a full tall boy?
No, but you have.
It hurts.
You have.
It's smart.
I think I might have read about that in your book, maybe.
Well, I've been in some situations like that. And not deserving. Just kidding. Okay, that's me trying to be a comedian.
Yay.
Right, that's the Dremel with the cha-ching, the sound of the cash register opening at the end of the drum roll.
Exactly. How is the new book doing? My Damage. I loved it. It was a great read. How's that thing doing for you?
Actually, about 3 weeks ago, sat down with the guy that put it out. He works for a company called The Capo. The newest book that he's put out, because he normally puts out a book once a month. So the book that came out right after my book was Brian Wilson's new book.
Interesting.
And then the book that came out right after Brian Wilson's book is Steve Jones from Jonesy's Jukebox, the guitarist from one of our favorite bands, the Sex Pistols. Yeah.
I'd like to read that book.
But I sat down with him, and because I had to grind on him a bit. I live in a really bitchin' community where I pretty much walk everywhere I want to go. You know, now if I want to go to Amoeba Records further down Sunset Boulevard, I get on the bus and spend $1.75 and not have to worry about parking and all the other freaks that are out there driving around that are on their cell phones or smoking cigarettes or chewing gum, and can they cross the street, smoke a cigarette, and chew gum at the same time? And the answer most of the time is no. Not having to pay auto insurance, not having to bow down to some large oil company. I take the RTD, the extra car, and here in my community, I have a couple of bookstores, and they stopped carrying my book. One of the stores never even carried my book. I did an event at their store with Dave Alvin from the Blasters, my friend Iris Berry, who I used to work with at Millie's further up Sunset Boulevard, a friend of ours, Chris D., who was responsible for the Flesh Eaters and the Divine Horsemen.
Oh, yeah.
And signing the Misfits and the Gun Club to Slash Records.
Wow, smart man.
And another friend, Pleasant, who was one of the first punk rock girls in Hollywood. So we do this event. They ordered, I think they ordered something like 20 books, and we sold all 20 books. And they didn't bother to order any more books. I go in there and I see Alice Bagg's book. I see John Doe's book, which was the book that came out right before mine.
Great read.
Pardon me?
I said that was a great read, by the way, too.
Yeah, and fast. Anyways, both of the bookstores aren't restocking my book, and you would think if you're a member of the community and you support these businesses in your community, that they would want to support you in your endeavors. And I was taken aback by that, because I know all of the people that work in these stores, and I don't want to go in there and be the grumpy, grouchy, whiny ass, complainer. I don't want to do that. So I sat down with the guy that put out my book, the guy that works for DeCapo, and I grilled him. It's like, so how do we keep a supply in these stores? Why don't they have 6 copies of my book or 3 copies of my book and displaying it prominently? Now, this book world is a whole new thing for me. I mean, I've written chapters here, I've written chapters there, I've written critiques for magazines and fanzines, but being a part of the I guess, literary world, which I'm really not, but now I am. I'm learning all of these different things. It's like, well, you don't get to order 6 books from the book company. You got to order a couple of dozen books. So now it's kind of dawning on me that these people, they don't want to order 24 books or 30 books and have them sit on their shelves.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this, Keith. As far as sitting down to write a book, I mean, that's a pretty daunting task. For anybody. Did you find that writing the book? Did you enjoy the process? I mean, or did you kind of find it, like I said, daunting? I can't remember last week, so I think it would be a really tough job to try to write a book about events that happened 10, 20, 30, whatever years ago. Did you find that you enjoyed the process of writing the book, or was that kind of, did you kind of throw up your hands a few times while you were doing that? And
well, it was work. And I'm, when it comes to the literary world, and English and basic English, if I got a D+ or a C-, I would throw a party,
right on.
a raging kegger, and invite all of the exotic dancers that work up the street here, and make sure that they bring their drug dealing boyfriends along with them. I had been approached by one of my really good friends who is no longer with us, a guy named Brendan Mullen, who was responsible for a place called The Mask, which was the place where the alley cats and the bags and the zeros and the dills and the controllers and the germs and X and the weirdos and the screamers played in the very beginning of what I would consider the second wave of punk rock in Los Angeles. Now, many historians would skip the first wave, which I thought would be bands like Love singing Little Red Book, and the Seeds singing Pushing Too Hard, and the Standells singing Dirty Water and Good Guys Don't Wear White.
Yeah, the garage stuff.
But well, I think that aggressive music with aggressive lyrics, us against the man, me against the world, that would be kind of a blueprint for punk rock. Anyways, my friend Brendan, R.I.P., said, Keith, you got to write a book. I said, Brendan, I've been writing stories because I'd heard mumblings and grumblings and people talking behind my back and people talking in front of my face about how I need to write a book because I have all of these, what they would say, great or amazing stories. So I started chipping away, not knowing that you want to be concise. You want, there's a certain pace that has to happen. There's a certain starting point and getting to the end, and all of the things that happen in between. The book guy, Ben, said, we got to have a meeting. I'm going to introduce you to a writer, somebody that's actually written books. See, like I said earlier, I've written critiques. I've played the role of Mr. Musical critic. I've written live reviews and all sorts of fun things like that.
So you had some
for a magazine. A lot of these fanzines or smaller magazines, they don't have somebody breathing on your neck saying, well, instead of 10 paragraphs, we only need 3 paragraphs.
Right.
Because some of these people that I've worked with and worked for and alongside of were just happy to have me be a part of, well, this is Keith Morris, and he's done all of these things. So that's going to give us some juice. That'll get some people psyched. It's like, I understand that, and I've been given a lot of leeway. When you're writing a book for a publisher, when you're writing a book for a major, the company that I've worked with, DeCapo, is the world's largest independent bookseller.
Oh, nice.
So I get the best of both worlds.
Very cool.
Ben says, I want to have you sit down with a couple of writers. See, I would have worked with Brendan because he was the one that suggested it in the first place. Brendan had written, we've got the neutron bomb. He'd written a germs book, Darby Crash. He was in the process of writing a book for the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Yeah,
and
actually,
normally when you write these books, you're going to do a minimum 5 to 6 rewrites. And when you're working with somebody of that stature, you're going to have people in the band tell you, well, you can't say that about me. This is what you've got to say about me. So, anyways, I wanted to work with Brendan. Brendan fell over from a massive stroke. Getting back to the guy that I ended up writing the book with, he, when I say he, Ben, who is the publisher, said you can have him as a ghostwriter, and I said I don't want a ghostwriter. If he writes what he's going to write, if he's going to go through all of the work that he's going to go through, if he's going to go through everything that we're going to go through to get from point A to point B, or from the beginning to the end, he's going to get full credit. I'm not on some egotistical trip where it's like, oh no, you just get to be the ghostwriter.
So let me ask you this, Keith. As far as writing and playing music, being in a band, which would you say that do you prefer touring with a band, or I know you also did a little bit of a book tour, right? Which of those do you prefer? Do you kind of prefer more the music scene? You find there's kind of less snobbery in the music scene than there is in the literary world?
I really can't answer that, because snobs are snobs, whether they listen to music or whether they read books.
Right.
And I've experienced a few. I've actually been accused of being a snob myself, and that happens occasionally. Everybody has a bad day every now and then, and there's this whole rash of people out there that think you're just supposed to drop everything you're doing to, lick their shoes, or
people have expectations sometimes. It's not cool.
Give them a back and neck massage. But I'm a diabetic. I'm suffering hypoglycemia. I can't stop to talk to you.
And you really are.
Maybe we'll run into each other after the show when I'm feeling better. But anyways, getting back to the writing of the book, I had no problem. We did about 70 hours of interviews.
I was going to ask you that about interviewing.
We sat and I told stories, I answered questions, we got in the car and drove around and went to certain locations. We went to the Mask, we went to where the Starwood used to be, we went to where the Polish Auditorium used to be on Crenshaw Boulevard. We went to the Hermosa Pier, we went to 9th and Strand. We did quite a bit of work.
Yeah, it's
paid off, because everybody tells me I've heard 2 complaints about the book. And then, of course, I got a complaint from an ex-girlfriend who said she was so bummed out about what I wrote that I'm a punk rock loser and I'm a sexist pig.
Well, yeah, and not everybody's got their own opinion of the way things, the way life is in certain incidents. So, that's yours. If she wants hers out there, she needs to write a book.
I did call her to get permission to tell the story of her pulling a knife on me. And of course she said, well, you can't say that about me. So I didn't.
That's good. It was a really good book, though, man. It was one of the better punk rock kind of nostalgic books I've read in a while, and I read a lot. And there was a lot of stories in there that I had kind of questions about concerning the origins of the early LA scene and stuff. And I really appreciate the book. A lot of good pictures in there, too. It was a great book. How long did it take you to write that thing?
I think we spent about a year. Oh, another complaint. Somebody accused me of just being an opportunist who wasn't really punk rock. I like that one too. See, I would like to use all of these quotes on the back of the next book. The book company was so happy with the way that the book moved along, and the response from people out there.
Ka-ching!
They didn't expect expect it to sell the way that it did. It went into its second printing. I believe it was maybe a month and a half in, which is kind of quick.
Well, yeah, and there's a lot of information in there about, the early scene, a lot of, historical information about, the genre and history as far as that goes. So people are interested in that kind of thing. I mean, young people all the way up to, people in their 50s and 60s who are around when the scene, when you started out.
And if you just tuned in right now, we're interviewing and chatting with Keith Morris, vocalist of the band Off, Circle Jerks, and Black Flag, and you're at KSKQ Radio, Southern Oregon. Southern Oregon, brother. Yeah, we're about 20 miles from the Cali border.
Are you a duck or are you a beaver?
I'm not either one, but a lot of people around here are very passionate about that. That's for sure, man.
Well, what else do you have?
That's about it.
Portland Trailblazers.
That's about it.
When it comes to that kind of thing, if you're a sports fan, I jumped on a thread on Facebook. Somebody's daughter was in a marching band.
Interesting.
Okay, so she plays a musical instrument. She plays in the high school marching band. And Dad was bummed out because he had to go to the sporting event and wait for the halftime to hear his daughter play, and was complaining about organized sports. And we know that organized sports basically is the guy getting tossed to the lions.
All right.
Okay. My argument, when we have all of these billionaire owners that don't want to build stadiums, they want the taxpayers to pay for the stadiums and
this
team and that team. My friend Flea explained it to me because he's a Lakers fan.
Oh, boy.
And there are a bunch of our friends who are Clippers fans. And he says, I hate the Clippers. And you know what? In sports, you get to hate other people. You get to hate the other
And it's
team.
perfectly acceptable to do so in sports, it seems.
But my bottom line argument is that I live in Los Angeles, and we have all sorts of different social groups, and we also have what many would consider to be one of the world's largest ghettos, being South Central Los Angeles. And in that ghetto, you have blacks and browns. And some of them, they don't get to leave the ghetto. The ghetto basically is kind of a giant jail or a prison where people, those people are very oppressed. It's like, you stay there because we know that you're there and we can control you while you're there.
Right on.
And consequently, some of the things that happen in this ghetto is you have guns and you have violence and you have gangs and you have drug dealers and you have people dying from drugs. You have people getting shot on corners. You have buildings getting burnt down. Whenever there's a riot, there's always, whenever somebody's pissed off about something, somebody gets beaten down or these kids get shot or all of these kids are getting thrown in jail or if there's a riot, they start burning buildings down in their own neighborhoods.
Yeah, I know. There's been a lot of talk about that recently here with different rights. I hate to cut you short, Keith. We're running out of time here. I wanted to ask you just before we have to kind of let you go, what is going on with you musically? If you could just tell us briefly if you've got anything in the works, an album perhaps, if you're, what are you doing musically right now?
Writing a new Off record. We started last week, but getting back to the ghetto, there's certain people in the ghettos that can run and catch balls and hit home runs and swim faster than other people and leap in the air and end up maybe in the Olympics or end up getting a scholarship to a university or a college. So more power to them. You know, if they can run and maybe they'll get an education in the process.
Right.
It's part of the deal. So they don't get shot and killed on a street corner. They're not smoking crack cocaine.
Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it.
I'll take sports over the LAPD any day of the week.
Hallelujah.
So is there going to be a tour after the Off album? And we have to kind of cut it off here, Keith, but we wanted to ask you real quickly if there's a tour in the works to go with the album.
My next tour of any kind would be with Flag. Off, when we make our album, we're not going to be in any hurry to be getting in the van and driving anywhere. We're playing it we're going in a different direction.
Okay.
Also, we'd like to have you back on the show in the future if it's possible.
All you got to do is hit me with an email.
Awesome, brother. Keith Morris, grab his new book, My Damage. It's a really good rock book, not only about punk rock, but about life in general. This guy has kicked drug addiction and all kinds of great stories that you have to read, man. Thank you, Keith Morris.
Thank you.
I appreciate your time, brother. We'll talk to you soon, man, and good luck to you.
Right on. You guys take care.
Thanks, brother.